Welcome to the Soccer Geeks podcast, hosted by Jason Barbato.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Soccer Geeks podcast. We have a very exciting and different format of a show for you today. This is our 20th episode. Marissa and I are pretty pumped, and we want to invite everybody and welcome you all to the party that we're now having in the pod.
We got a woo squad here.
We got a woo squad. So the format of what we decided to do today to all of our listeners out there is we just decided to basically invite everybody who's ever been on the show before, for whoever was available when we were recording this, just to bring part of our community together. We wanted to be able to have great conversations. We want to be able to reflect on the things that we're learning in the sport and about ourselves and ways that we can contribute. And at the same time, just have a great time building relationships with one another, which is genuinely what we're trying to build on the show. We're trying to grow and we're trying to connect. So, Marissa, Marissa, here's the other part. Marissa gets to actually join the whole time on the show today. So I'm personally very excited because we all love her on the show and she's such a delight. So she gets to be more of an integral part today. Yeah. Marissa, anything you want to chime in or say?
Go Charlotte FC. Woo!
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Wells. I appreciate that. Yeah, we just didn't show up. But I'm excited to have a seat at the table with everyone virtually and, get into some soccer talk. I'm usually in the backstage doing my things and making notes and prepping the episode. So I'll be here on screen at all times unless my dog has a freak out and I have to jump off. But yeah, I'm here. And now, you know what?
We're going to do, by the way. So
yeah. Gunner. He doesn't know his name yet, so I'm just gonna keep saying the name. So we let's do a little quick intro for those who are listening, who are the people that are here. So I'll go to on screen to the right. So Rory, why don't you start us off? Tell us your name and your affiliation and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Rory Sutherland, and I direct the sports performance for San Diego Surf Soccer Club in Del Mar. And I also currently in an office, I'm also an exercise physiologist. So I do a lot with cardiology, put people on treadmills and look at how they handle stress. And in the end, that's really kind of the fundamental thing we're looking at is how we handle stress and how resilient we are against it. So I like these kind of these two modes that I have. But and then on the kind of a third part there is I run a little Instagram and kind of a side business called Southerly Performance. And so there's remote training that I do with that, kind of like app-based programming. And it's also a place where I just kind of go through education and post cool science articles regarding the sport or other things that I'm interested in. So I think that's the short of it.
Great. Yeah. And for those listening, Rory was on our 16th episode. So he covers a lot of stuff that he works in on his episode specifically. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. And Rory, I do have to say this because when you're talking about breathing through your nose, like almost every night I think about putting tape on my mouth just to like breathe through my nose. Because I'm like, I know it's going to work. But and then I was walking up the stairs to Nashville SC. So there's 90 stairs from one of the parking lots to the top of the, and I was like, it was hot. It was 100 degrees. And I was just remembering what you said, breathe your nose. And I made it. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but I'm not a soccer player, but those very basic fundamentals did help me get through that climb.
It's good if you do those stairs often, you can keep practicing and you'll notice it'll get a lot easier, a lot faster. It's a cool effect.
Yeah. One stair for every minute that Charlotte FC was in the lead against that game against Nashville the other day.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate this.
I'm not even a
Charlotte. Okay, you'll get roasted the rest of the show. It's fine.
Listen, Andrew's going to come up with, because he knows exactly how to push my buttons really quick based on the performance this last weekend in MLS. So we'll get there. Let's go counterclockwise there. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my boy with the Larry King glasses. What you got?
What's up, guys? Andrew Hosmar. Work in business intelligence with the New England Revolution. It's been almost a year. This is now my 4th club that I've worked for in the U.S. Recently, I just got back from visiting the league headquarters for the first time in New York, and we won't talk about our match against New York City. That's besides the point. And as Jason said, I know how to push his buttons. And the first club I ever worked for was the Timbers, so it was a good weekend for us, especially.
Build a bonfire.
And got the fish. But Jason and I have, we started talking maybe sometime in early 2020, and ever since then, just been, like you said, done a great job of kind of connecting with other professionals around the country and especially around the world too. And just looking to, conversations like these are crucial to continuing to grow the sport in the US, and always happy to participate and, share ideas.
Yeah, buddy. Happy to have you. Can't wait to, maybe we'll get a chance for you to also chime in and share about some of the European vacation you just got back and all the clubs you got to visit as well. Sunshine, moving around your house with the video. Are you anywhere near your setup there, Mr.
Yeah,
Thompson?
yeah. I'm here. I'm back.
Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Thomas Wells Thompson. That is not a joke. My parents named me Thomas Thompson, but I go by Wells. It's funny. The lunch ladies at Wake Forest thought that was hilarious.
Your name was Wells or Tommy Thompson?
Tommy Thompson. They would always laugh at it and be like, "It's a cool name." My granddad's name was Tommy Thompson, by the way. Okay. Who am I? That's a good question. I'm a husband. I've been married for 10 years to my pre-K sweetheart. No joke. We have 3 young boys, 8, 5, and 3. And parenting is the hardest, greatest thing in the world.
Amen. I
was an expert before I had kids, and now I'm just a dumb ass because I don't, I'm just glad they're alive at the end of the day.
Yep. It's amazing more people, 1, don't like their kids don't perish, or 2, they don't kill their kids.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing about being a parent. It's just the shock value that the humankind has flourished and grows numerically. It's just this massive surprise.
I read the books before I was a parent, and I told my brother he was doing it the wrong way before I had kids. I'm like, dude, you're doing it wrong. The book says to do it this way. And I realized that it's a lot harder than just reading a book. So, yeah, you want me to go into like my background and stuff?
No. You're good. We're gonna throw a few grenades in there. It's kind of funny when you say that though, because that almost makes me want to think and jump right into coaching and to even playing. It's like you can read a book, like you can read one of Pep's books, like on his coaching philosophy. That doesn't mean that like that's always the right way to do it in every situation, right? Those are general good guides, and that there's some conventional wisdom in there. But
can I tell you real quick why I introduced myself that way?
Yeah.
Is because I only saw myself as an athlete for 32 years of my life. And then one day I wasn't an athlete anymore. I had no idea who the hell I was. Yeah. And so it's I think that, it's so easy in this world to be defined by what we do, by our work. And it's important for us to have these conversations about being more than an athlete, being more than a coach, being more than your record, your performance, because I just so believe, man, that like balance off the field. Okay, talking sports now, balance off the field creates enhanced performance on the field, and vice versa in whatever sphere or work that you're in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, dude.
Thank you so much.
Glad you shared it. Yeah, because we're definitely more than what we do, and I think that we have a culture that definitely only values production. Your value really comes from, hey, how much do you produce at home? How much do you produce at work? How much money do you have? What's your degrees? What have you done? Instead of like, well, who are you? I've met a lot of really terrible people who have a lot of money, who have a lot of influence, who have a lot of degrees. And that doesn't mean that they're great people. It just means that they've done stuff. You can't assign the value just based on what you've done. And I'm sure you guys, everybody in the room pretty much has played sport before. And just because someone is the best player on the team doesn't mean that they're the best soccer player or the best person.
Well, I think there's a massive, and sorry to interrupt you, there's a massive gap there because the best player is always the leader, but they don't know how to lead. they don't, and that's not taught. So I think it needs to be taught more.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of want to first tee this off too. I'm kind of curious for you guys, again, throwing out the round table, what is it that you guys want to I have a few things I would love to chat about today, but what are some things that you guys are kind of be excited to talk about, things that are on your mind, or things, ideas that you'd love to kind of share and get people's thoughts and reflections on? Cause I got a couple things I'd love to be able to throw out there, but I want to open the floor first up to everybody else's kind of thoughts and contributions.
I don't want to talk. I just want to hear from Rory and Andrew. So you guys tell them what you want to talk about.
I was going to be the fly on the wall.
Wow.
I mean, I'd be really interested in hearing from Rory kind of how he feels about the relationship of complex data is with that now trainers are having access to, and what is kind of the proper balance of like a holistic approach versus trying to be, so precise. And I got my Whoop on. I've had it for a couple of years. I have access to probably way more data than I need, just as like a weekend warrior or whatever you would call it. So
Sure.
What is, I guess, do you view it as something that is just a nice supplement to have, or do you really think there's a future of trying to be able to predict how many minutes a player could play in a match? And again, that's an extreme example, but like I feel like that's something that some people might actually try to implement at some point.
Sure. Well, I'm a very biometrically dependent person, almost to a fault. So I do see a lot of benefit with it. I've done some of the GPS tracking myself, and really kind of fundamentally, the most important thing is, what have you been doing and what are you going to be doing? I really, that's like the fundamental question that I want to know first and foremost, and then break it into internal load, which will be, all your biometrics, your heart rate, your HRV, your respirations, depending on your levels of tracking. I mean, some clubs are going to be looking at your analysis and things of that nature. And then your external loads, your GPS, your speed, your duration. And so, it is big. I think when you go through education in my field, you see like the big shiny objects and you're super stoked to like get data crunching. But then you get kind of punched in the face when you try to explain it to the skills coaches. And so I think, the data is massively important, and I'm always going to be a proponent of it. But also you need those skills to be able to communicate them effectively. Because I've seen clubs where they have 60 stat sports trackers, which so many clubs would be dying to have, and they're just sitting there collecting dust. And you need someone to take and clean the data, and it's a full-time job. So to have that luxury, it's a massive luxury. Now, from like the personal basis, like, so just me here with my Garmin watch, I'm looking at it, I'm always posting on my social media about it. The information it provides, where it's not always going to be super accurate, but it'll be precise, and it'll help you understand deviation from norm. I would like, even kind of the older youth players, before they get into maybe like the collegiate setting, to start to understand these things, start to understand, like, so like when you're in a sleep lab, you have 30 plus sensors on you. And this watch, has, I don't know, 4 or 5 sensors that are acting all at once. So it's not going to be the most accurate, but it does know when I had a late session, right? It does know when I had a relatively restful sleep. So I think the more we can learn about ourselves from just a health standpoint, a lot of my players don't care about health; they care about performance, and kind of what Wells was talking about. What are we taking from athletics outside of the pitch? I want more people, and I want more parents to be looking at how is this healthy rather than how is this successful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I don't know if I ever had, going back to playing, club growing up and playing in high school and stuff, like never thought that was never crossing our minds. So I think it's good to have that when we
Yeah.
talk about, injury prevention at the collegiate and then getting into professional level. Some people, depending on the school you're going to, you're not going to have access to a lot of the same resources. And so the more you can arm people with information on their own, then they can, be better prepared to kind of understand what's going on in their body.
Nice. Great question there, Andrew. Rory, appreciate your thoughts there on that. We got somebody else who's joined in on the pod. Elliot, you want to go ahead and say what's up to everybody? And
Hey, Elliot.
Hi,
good having you, bud.
What's up, everyone? How we doing?
We're doing good, buddy.
Good.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. It's a good conversation. I'm just listening in here.
That's kind of what we wanted to do here on the old 20th episode here of the Soccer Geeks podcast is, our aim and heart is to bring people together and have great conversations. Those are kind of the two things we really want to do. Miss Maggie, I want to bring you into, I know that Maggie's
Bell, yes.
Yeah, she's walking.
I love Maggie Bell.
I am en route to a coffee shop right now, so I'm going to stay off video for a minute, but good to be on here with everyone. Hello.
Yeah, you're good. Maggie's so sweet. I actually just texted Maggie a few seconds ago and I was like, Maggie, we need another female body in the room. Like, would you get in here? We got too many dudes hanging out. So she is always the kindest person in the room and jumped on with us. So thanks so much, Mags. Looking forward to when you can join us via video, but yeah, glad that you're here. Yeah. It's funny, Marissa, too. Do you remember everybody's episode numbers in the room? Because I don't know that I do. Because we on the show sometimes too, we record things and then we kind of change the order as they get released. So I don't remember everybody and the number of episodes that they were there. So
I don't remember everyone's, but I do have the list right in front of me. So
yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, maybe you can spot Maggie. Maggie have two of the most recent episodes.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you're 18.
I do want to mention Andrew's episode was episode 8. He was one of the first ones that we interviewed. So,
yeah,
but it came out like a lot later than we originally recorded it. So we probably need to have him on and like have a different like recording style. Like your style was different. Like, it's a little bit different. And then we have Elliot's was episode 10.
10 or 12. Yeah.
And then
good number.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, do the maestro. Here we go. Hey, one of the things I wanted to kind of throw out to everybody too, just by way of curiosity, so people know when the pod comes out, we're only recording this a week before we actually release it. And here we are in like the height of summer transfer windows. And, one of the things we don't do on the show typically is talk about current events because who knows when it's getting released. However, we know when this one's coming out. I'm just kind of curious if anybody would love to be able to share kind of the summer signing, I guess, in the game that you guys and gals are probably most excited about, just looking forward to the fall. Obviously, this year is going to be wild because it's a World Cup in December year, which is going to have, I think, some pretty big ramifications on leagues around the world. And just kind of curious what summer signing or what signing during this transfer window you guys feel is going to have the biggest impact globally on the game.
No idea.
Well, I love the fact that
no one follows.
You don't care. No one follows.
Like UFC or MMA, I'm down.
Okay.
On in the soccer world, guys.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. That actually really tells me
I will
all
watch
I
the
need to
World
know.
Cup.
Yeah.
Okay. Thomas Thompson. All right. Anybody? I mean, I've got like 2 or 3, but no one wants to hear me talk the entire time. So anybody else? Andrew, who are you most excited about signing wise?
Here at the Revs, I mean, it's got to be Petrovic. It's hard to believe that he put together like a team of the week performance last week and still gave up 4 goals, which just goes to show how that match went last week against City. But
well, 3 of those were PKs, dude. Let's not go there. They were soft PKs too. Let's not go there. Really.
But I mean, outside the U.S., I mean, as a U.S. fan, it's exciting to see what we're building at Leeds, and but in terms of like actual like impact, I mean, it's got to be Holland. I can't think of he's the one position that City needs, and he's an absolute killer. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a question because Nashville is playing LAFC on Sunday, and they're going to have Cellini and Bale. Yeah, whatever you want to call him. He's the Italian guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Italian. Are you the speaker for all Italians?
There's 3 ways to pronounce season in Italian. Go for it. Yeah.
Thank you for roasting me. I appreciate it.
Like no one cares. It's good.
I know. I'm curious how these older or what the mentality is behind these older players coming over to the US and how that affects the growth of the game just in general, MLS, because I feel like it's been happening for 20 years. All these older players coming over. Who did it start with? Beckham. And how that will affect the growth with the World Cup coming in. But does that make more people follow MLS just because they have these huge stars? Like, are they making impact on the field? Like, I don't know. I don't know if you guys think of that because they're like, oh my God, it's so great. Like Gareth Bale is going to go against Zimmerman. It's like a preview of
he's doing
World
marketing.
Cup.
He's doing research. You gotta respect Bale. He's getting embedded in the weeds there in his data research. He's going to find out real fast.
Yeah.
Marissa, here's why I think this is a great question. For a long time, Americans have been accused or globally, right? American players have had this narrative that, Chelsea's just signing Pulisic to sell jerseys. Red Bulls are only picking, Leipzig and Salzburg are only getting American players to get eyeballs. And so there's like this narrative where the only reason why Americans would care about a club in Europe would be because, they're signing American players to sell jerseys. And I almost wonder if like the same narrative is kind of true. Like the narrative is just like, players just go to the United States now just to kind of phone it in and collect a paycheck and to raise the profile of the league. So there's like these narratives that I think kind of go on around the league. I look, Gerrard and Frank Lampard both showed that like you can't just walk into this league and think that you're going to be able to run over everybody. Like they showed it. Like they were absolutely terrible playing in the United States, and those guys wholeheartedly they did not have enough left in the tank for what the game is here. Wells, you played a long time in MLS. You played during a time where some guys did treat this as like a European retirement league. Did you ever kind of come across that, or how was that kind of perceived from inside locker rooms?
Yeah, with the league's obviously gotten a little better since my time. But I mean, there's a lot of successful guys that have come over. I mean, David Beckham, I don't know how old he was when he came over, but he was damn good.
Yeah.
Like I just remember like playing against him being like, oh, he's old, I mean, he's good. He's still freaking good. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of positive examples like, Henri, Beckham, who's Blanco, Schweinsteiger, right? There's a lot of positive examples. I mean, and I do think it benefits MLS. Like, are you going to sit here and say that Gareth Bale's not good? I think he's still good. 32 years old is not like, it's old considered in soccer, but like one of the things that happens when you get older in the sport is you get wiser. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to compensate for your for the lack of youth, right? The lack of so-called youth. So if you get wiser, you get smarter. I mean, I think I retired around 32. I didn't want to retire. I retired because of injuries, but I felt I was the best I'd ever been because I saw the game differently. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think all these guys coming over is great. I mean, I did a call this morning through Soccer Resilience with a bunch of kids in Rwanda, and they were like, I don't know if they had heard of the MLS. There was a translation barrier and stuff, but they knew who Thierry Henry was. They knew who David Beckham was. So that's like all I had to say was like, hey, I played against Beckham, but you got to be careful with that because I was like talking to 13-year-old girls the other day, like through team, and I was like, who David Beckham is? Like I touched him, they were like, who's David Beckham? I was like, Posh? They were like, no. I was like, oh my God.
But ask him in 2 years who Romeo Beckham is, and I guarantee you all of them will know.
That's true.
Yeah, I digress. I think it's great for the league.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I got another topic I'd like to throw out there. Going back to your point, Andrew, in my opinion as well, Erling Haaland is probably the signing of the year. However, I think where Lewandowski ends up could be really, really, really interesting and kind of create some dominoes falling there throughout some of the bigger clubs in the world. Maggie Bell, I'd love to ask your opinion on this, because right now we've got the Euros, the Euros happening for the gals. And what absolutely frustrates me, being such a big fan of the product that we have for the women's game in our country, is that it seems that just because Europe is doing it, it's, you look at the top 50 players in women's soccer and there's not one US female that's in the top 10. And it absolutely, like, it's, to me, if I was a gal playing for the US, I would be so pissed. I would beg for an entrance into the Euros just to smash every team 25-0. Because I think it's like the most offensive thing I can possibly think of for our national program. There's been a lot of criticism lately too about the way that the women's head coach is kind of coaching the team and some of the rosters he's putting out. And I just would love to get your thoughts kind of on watching the Euros compared to what we see week in and week out with the quality that we have in the NWSL, how those rosters are being balanced now that a lot of European players are there. So I just love to get kind of your state of the union right now on the gals game.
Yeah. I also, just sat down. But two
Perfect
things.
timing.
One, just to circle back to that conversation you guys were having about, the older players that enter the game. I think Marta on the women's side is a perfect example of that. She's 36 now and she's still killing it with Orlando Pride. And I know girls who have played with her. I played with a couple of them in Germany, and they're one of them. And she was she's just so smart. She makes you better just by being there. So even when people are old and maybe, losing a little bit of their natural athletic talent, I do think their knowledge of the game helps advance other players' knowledge of the game around them. And I'm sure it's the same case in the MLS. Just playing with them and against them, you learn so much. But yeah, back to the Euros. I would say it's hard because it's, the game is growing in all different areas of the world. And traditionally we've just been so dominant on the US side that it's been it didn't really matter what they said about us on other sides of, across the pond, because truthfully we would just always beat them in the World Cup, and it was all that mattered was the fact that we were the strongest in those, and we could put our money where our mouth was. But now as the game started to grow more and more across the world, and bigger clubs are putting money into their women's leagues, it is starting to be a question okay, how do we make this work? How do we combine all of the top players to get that chance to play against each other, or at least be included in that scene? So I don't have an answer for you, but it's an interesting question.
You're muted, Jay.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'll say my whole thought again. As if you're watching the video, I'm just looking up to the sky. I'm just asking God help me. It seems that the narrative, though, around the women's game, especially internationally, is not only that the rest of the world has caught up to the US, but flown by it and surpassed it. And even from a league standpoint, it's purely just looking at attendance numbers now. Look, we have these huge stadiums and we're drawing massive crowds. Obviously, the product here is better. And is that really a fair assessment of the product that we're seeing on the field at the Euros compared to what we see week in and week out with, within our federation, within CONCACAF, within the NWSL?
Yeah, I don't think that's fair. I think there's probably a wider variety of levels abroad than there is in the US. I think one weakness of the US league is that it's pretty, in some ways it's a little bit political, and who's able to get one of those roster spots, and they don't treat the non-roster squads very well. They're kind of disposable, and as a result it's just kind of a barrier to entry. So that's less of the case in Europe, just because they have a lot of different levels. And to be fair, the top women's leagues. I mean, I went to a Barcelona game when my friend actually got to play against them because their team was in Champions League, and watching the Barcelona women's team play was like a dance. Like, it was so beautiful. So I think, again, not having that actual competition between that and being able to see that week in and week out of like, okay, who really is the top, if people are saying like, is Europe the top women's league or is the US? I think they're different and they could both benefit from being combined. But yeah, I don't think it's fair to say that Europe has fully surpassed the US in the games they're able to.
It seems that produce. We had a massive jump start in the women's game here in this country, and it seems that particularly most of the MLS owners who've kind of dabbled, maybe they should have a women's team or maybe not. It seems that they missed a massive opportunity to have a commanding lead forever for the women's game by not valuing enough the place that sport can have in our country. And it seems that everybody else in Europe saw what was happening here, and they jumped on real quick, and they had the infrastructure, and not only the infrastructure, they jumped on it real quick. So it's going to be a real interesting next 10 years in women's in WOSO, in women's soccer. It's going to be real exciting to see kind of how this evolves.
Yeah. And I fully agree with that. Kind of a hot take, and I don't want to like offend anyone in the room, but it does feel like it was somewhat of like a pride thing, when teams were really strong. They didn't necessarily want to pick up women's teams because they didn't want to be seen as, a club that had both, which is such an odd thing because, the women's game is growing and is so strong in the US. But I just have heard so many stories of people in the NWSL who have experienced that and seen club owners not want to pick up a women's team. And that narrative is definitely changing now, but it's an odd dichotomy because you're like, why would you not want to support this and to help this grow?
It makes no sense. We have a massive country. There's no reason why the NWSL should have 12 teams. There's none. There's over 100 professional male clubs, CLUB, like football and soccer clubs, which means you don't just have a male team. It means that you are a sporting organization, and you should definitely have if you have a male side, you should have a female side. Hell, if Angel City wants to roll out a men's team, throw them in USL 1. Let's go. Why not be a club? Actually be one instead of just being a male and or female team. And that's kind of switching from the American kind of franchise model. That's a hot take for you, Maggie. Angel City getting a men's team. That would be pretty interesting. No, I appreciate you chiming in on that. Kind of what other kind of topics or things are kind of floating out there for you guys? What are the things that are getting you guys excited about? Things that you guys are pondering or chewing on?
Let's call on Elliot. He hasn't.
Yeah, Elliot, college season is about ready to roll, buddy. And obviously with recruit fluency and everything you guys are doing, this is a real critical time. What are some of the trends and patterns that you're seeing in college soccer for athletes? Especially coming post-COVID with, people having an extra year. What are you seeing kind of on that front there?
Yeah, appreciate it. So going back to narrative, you spoke about that earlier. And I said this when we were on air last time. The narrative throughout the youth sports landscape when it comes to college recruitment is that you're just going to have someone do it for you, right? And no one wants to put in the work. No one wants to sort of walk through fear. And I know this isn't necessarily answering your question specifically, but it's what I'm seeing, right? So we have a couple of, juggernauts in the business. Let's say NCSA, and I don't care if I offend anyone, so I'm just going to go there. We have NCSA, we have Be Recruited, and then we have a couple of other ones that underlie, right below them, which are without getting too into it, boiler room type organizations that don't really they market themselves exceptionally well, and they've done a great job to control that narrative throughout the youth sports landscape. But they're not producing, or they're not coming. They don't follow what they market in what they actually provide, is what I'm trying to say. So what I see a lot is high school athletes, not only on the soccer side, but throughout all sports, that are missing opportunities, right? Because they're relying on other people, other organizations to take the lead and find them a place to follow their passions and play soccer at the collegiate level, instead of going about things the right way, which, although they are the right way, maybe it's a little bit harder. Maybe you have to walk through a lot more fear. Maybe you have to get on the phone with college coaches, right? So I'm seeing a lot of people missing opportunities because they're unwilling to put in the hard work. And I think I know it stems from the parents, right? Everyone wants recruit fluency to show them the money, right? Like, that's really what they want me to do, is they want me to call a college coach. They want me to do this. They want me to do that, but they're unwilling to do the hard work themselves to get to where they need to be. And I think it's an underlying tone within our culture, within soccer specifically, in that we see it on the field, we see it at practices, we see it, throughout the youth, is that people are unwilling to do the hard work to get to where they want to be. So it's really interesting. And I guess it's a bone that I pick every day, right? It's something that I deal with. But to answer your question, that's what I see. I see a lot of the same old, and no one willing to change their approach to college recruitment.
Yeah, and when there's those narratives exist and stuff, and when someone's not willing to work hard, like Wells Thompson can attest in the conversation that we had a few weeks ago, someone who's willing to work hard can step right in and take that opportunity right under your nose. And that's if you're not willing to work hard, the person who is going to be able to be the one who's going to be able to get that bone and to be able to go forward. And that's kind of the, without being too, old guy shaking my finger at the young generation, like no one values hard work anymore, but it's really difficult because most of the time, and I say this as a soccer parent, most of the time you try to create an opportunity to remove any obstacles or challenges for your kids. So when challenges come and hard work actually has to be deployed, they don't really have thick enough skin through experiencing enough adversity, challenge, or failure to know how to actually push through and be an overcomer. We're very soft. We're very soft in sport in that regard.
And I think it ultimately all comes down to fear, right? Being that sort of base tendency to default to is that I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to, do this perceived hard work because I'm just going to not get the result that I'm looking for. And I see that coming from the parents as well, as everyone's fearful. But they're unwilling to admit the fear, and they're unwilling to label it as fear because they're above that. So it's classified as something else.
Yeah. Well, as we were talking about parenting earlier too, and so that's kind of one of those things where you can even see that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in. What he was saying, one of the things that we do at Soccer Resilience is, and we were at Wake talking to the Wake men's program yesterday, and the very first thing we say is, guys, this isn't about like don't just believe me because I'm saying it. Like, this is about taking your career and your life into your own hands. I talk to professional athletes all the time, and then I look back on my career as being a pro. I didn't talk to coach. Like, pros will call me and be like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." I'm like, "Did you talk to coach?" They're like,
"Yeah."
And I'm like, it's the same in the college level. And I think it's the same. And I think it's pervasive amongst elite athletes, because elite athletes don't do things for themselves. They're told what to wear. They're told where to be, but they're considered the leaders, but they don't have a voice. Right. And there's a lot of cop out, especially I think when you get a little bit older. It's like, I lead by example. I lead by example. Okay, I'm just gonna lead by example. I think it's a cop out, because I think you have to be a truly good leader. You have to learn. You have to discover your voice. And part of me going into soccer resilience is like, I finally discovered my voice. Like, I never had a voice really when I was a pro. My voice was on the field and how I played, right? But anyway, all that to say, like, are you providing, and this would be really interesting to talk about, like, are you providing any psychological, like, coaching or resources for them? Because I do agree. I think it's psychological. People don't want to be told no. They're afraid to, they view confrontation as wrong. They view a conversation as confrontation. They don't know how to believe in themselves, and they know how to tweet and Instagram, all of those things, but they don't know how to like have a conversation with an adult. So I just wondered if that was part of your services or anything that you provided for them.
Yeah, so they have the option. I've worked closely with Shawnee Harley, who's a two-time Olympian coach with the national Canadian national organization, and she does a lot of mindset, very similar to soccer resilience, a little bit different capacity. But that's it's an offering. However, most of the time it's not taken up, because that's not the issue, right?
Oh,
That's not the issue.
Right.
And when I work with players one-on-one, which is an anomaly, I don't like to do it. I like to provide them the education to get through the process the way it's supposed to be done. But I will take some clients one-on-one if need be. And that is part of the service that I have to work through with them, which is coaching them on phone calls, coaching them on walking through the fear, coaching them on, what to do next. Do I do it as well as soccer resilience? Probably not. But yes, it is a part of our process, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's all life stuff. And I think sometimes a part of the conversation is that we overcomplicate things, and we say mental, and we say train your brain. And like every time I say that, it makes me feel funny inside. I'm like, that's weird. It's like, it's really just teaching life skills, you know?
Right. Right.
Well,
I got
Wells, let me chime in real quick, because I have a question. Gosh, everybody but Marissa and I in this whole entire room played soccer growing up. Can you without getting too much into anecdotes, but can you remember the age you were as a player when you took it upon yourself to go talk to the coach because you had a concern or you had a question? Like, do you remember how young you were when you felt I need to go talk to my coach about something that I'm thinking about? Does anything come to mind how young you were or how old you were?
Talk to them, or did we think it?
No, to actually go talk to them. Like how old that you felt you were empowered enough as a player on a team to go talk directly to a coach?
31, maybe.
I remember my parents telling me if I have an issue or I have a question, and I was 12 or 13, that the only way it was going to get solved was if I went and I spoke and had that conversation. Mm-hmm. So I think ultimately for me, it was younger, but only because I was guided the right way.
Yeah. Maggie, can you recall?
Yeah, I think I was probably 11 or 12. But interesting just to like add to this conversation, because I think I understand what all of you are saying, but I do think there's a fair amount of athletes on my side, and maybe it's a different experience within the women's game, but who are willing to make those leaps for themselves and ask questions, and are met with hostility, either from coaches and whatnot, and then that adds to the people are, they're told don't question the system, like don't, you're lucky to be here, and then you kind of learn to keep your mouth shut, and you've been successful, so why mess with the current equation that's working really well for you. So I do think it's a little bit of both ways. Like people need to be able to take it upon themselves to make those changes and learn, but on the other side, it's like having respect for players, because even like I found, and again, I'm coming from a unique place where I didn't have a great experience in college, but you weren't necessarily treated as a full human. You were treated as a player who, similar to the way they treat 13 or 14-year-olds. You're a full adult, you're asking questions, and oftentimes you weren't treated like that. And it's just a weird dichotomy where you're in college or you're a professional and you're making these life decisions for yourself and you're trying to advocate, and it's not always met with
warm
welcome
reception.
arms.
Yeah, a warm reception.
Yeah, so I think that is something the game as a whole needs to look at more of the other side as well, and be like, we're not creating a space in which people feel like they can't advocate for themselves.
Yeah. Well, there's that balance too, where you want a person to actually feel that they're empowered to have a voice for themselves. But let's be on the other end of the spectrum, there's people that feel that everything that they bring up, everybody should always listen to as well. Cause then that's the other side of the conversation that we're talking about, the fear and then the entitlement of like, well, I feel this, so, everybody should have to cater to now what I think needs to happen. I've been married for 18 years, so I understand the spectrum because I do both. And I've been through this a lot, and I have kids. Rory and Andrew, Maggie, thanks so much for chiming in, because your experience on that is really valuable.
Yeah.
Andrew, Rory, do you guys kind of remember how old you guys were talking to coaches and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I've been blessed with very compassionate coaches, at least from what I can remember, high school and older. And I was kind of the kid that would run through the wall for anyone that I looked up to. So that relationship was easy for me to fester. So for me, it was beginning of high school, because my brother had played and I knew the coaches and their family friends. And like I said, I run through the wall. Like we talked earlier about the best player being the captain on a team. And I think I remember I was sophomore year, I held the best player on the team up against the locker because he had the captaincy and I didn't think he was doing it right. It's not the proudest moment to resort to that.
But my captaincy now, it's our captaincy.
That's kind of how I felt, and being a big old center back, that's like what I had behind me was muscle and size. So, but yeah, that was probably then. And that's where I found myself, working with Surf, when Benoit David brought me in, who you've had on the podcast, and he's just such a compassionate guy. And I look at how he talks to the kids and, treats them all as adults. And that's the model that I want, kind of what Wells was talking about earlier. And just to bridge off of that, just, not all these kids are going to go all the way, and what are we taking from this? And, they still can. There are those guys too, those kids that, we're talking about the one side where we talk about entitlement and fear and all those things, but then there's those few kids that come up and they're there every day, they're early, they're asking questions, they're getting themselves prepped, and like it kind of fills you with joy, gives you that energy, to handle kind of the flip side of things. But I went a little long-winded on that, but
no, you're good, man. I appreciate it. Andrew, do you remember?
Yeah, I would want to say it was my senior year in high school, and it was because my junior year I played and started on every single team up until my junior year, and we got a new coach, and then was the leading scorer in preseason, and then just got benched for 75% of the season with supposedly no explanation. And so that was kind of the first time where I was like, I spoke up because I was just confused why all of a sudden what I thought was reality had suddenly changed. And I think we talked about this when I was on the podcast, but then, at junior year ends, and then being told that the only way I'd play my senior year was if I switched to goalkeeper, and ended up doing that. And just because I wanted to play, I didn't want to sit around and do nothing. And then ended up being, I think it was like top 3 in the state of Arizona that year after basically teaching myself. And so it was, on the podcast, we talked about finding your opportunities when your playing career ends. And while I was still playing, it was like that first point where I realized that my way of impacting the game it had no longer been playing, and now I had to realize that there's going to be other ways that I was going to be able to make my impact. And that was kind of that first point. And then obviously we go into what happened in college, and then what brought me to where I'm at right now. But it was a shock, but the conversation didn't go well. But I just kind of said, listen, this is the team that I have, and I want to play, and I want to help them win whatever way could. And
That is such an amazing story. Holy cow. I wish I was that mature now. Like, that's amazing. Seriously, that's a big deal. Goodness. Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and Elliot, I appreciate you kind of winding that one up, just because I Wells, for you to say I was 31 years old before I had that conversation first. That's way too late to have a big conversation about your own, like taking the reins of your own life and having conversations with adults. I know that for myself, for my kiddos, the best way that I can advocate for them is to empower them to have as many conversations as early as possible and interactions with adults, so that they can grow into maturity and know how to act and operate in the world. Because I won't always be there to hold their hand. Like, I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I could be gone. And so I want to be able to raise up my daughters, especially, to be able to be very confident in who they are. But I also have another philosophy that I use in business and stuff like that. It's always that you always have a no until you ask. If you never ask, or you never at least have conversations, you're assuming a no in that conversation. And what if the answer is yes? Or what if the answer is, hey, work on these two things and you're there? What if you learn a lot more about yourself by just at least asking and inviting people into that conversation with you? And so that's one of the big things that I have with life. It's one of the big things that we kind of tackle on this show is like, well, what if we could get so-and-so to be on the podcast? Well, what if I ask this question? What could happen? It's living more in the what if instead of the why nots. I guess not. I guess it's not going to happen. Well, nothing will happen if you don't, not necessarily if you don't make it happen, but if the answer's already no, you're just defeating yourself. Right. And so instead of, we talk a lot about mindset, but what if we actually start living in more of an interactive mindset instead of like defeatist always? And so I always think about that for youth players, college players, coaches, friends, business. If you're a human being and you have a pulse, live in the what if. What if the answer is yes? Then what? Because I think a lot of times, I think for a lot of players, I think a lot of professionals, I think a lot of people already assume failure. They already assume defeat. But what if the answer is not failure? What if it's success? And we're sometimes more afraid of succeeding because we're already assuming we're failing. And I think that if we can make that shift as young as possible for kids to kind of walk that out, we do a better job. We can do that in our businesses. If we can do that in the people that, Elliot, to your point about the people that are in your industry that you see that are just, man, they're just kind of phoning it in. They got a funnel system. They've got, 3 TED Talks that they've done about how, they basically are increasing profits for blah, 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 but they're not actually taking care of their consumers. Man, I see an opportunity. What if somebody actually cared?
Right. Well said.
Yeah. Sorry. That's me kind of wrapping all together. Go ahead, Marissa, put a bow on it.
No, my question actually was going to be, so how can we, so I don't have kids and I don't coach and I'm not a ref, but I am helping with this podcast to get these messages out and these really valuable, I think, life lessons, but also tactical things, when it comes to training. So my question was going to be, so what can someone like me or someone who does not play currently or does not have a company or runs a nonprofit or like does all these things that are like directly active? And I think it all comes back to, living in what Jason said, the what if, being there and being open to talking to younger kids about just life, not like, kind of, like we're not going to talk about that because it's, they're not my kid, or, just being a good representative, being a good human, because I think that helps. But I think, for me personally, being a football fan or soccer fan, we say soccer on this podcast because it's US based.
Right. That's damn right. Yeah.
But, doing the, raising awareness for people like myself that are fans of the game, and the abuse we get, like, for just being fans, the sexist abuse, I would say. Do you really watch the game, or do you have? No,
who's the cutest player to you, Marissa? Who is cute?
Oh my God. I'm not talking about
fandom. Like, no, I know, but like that's the narrative, right?
Yeah. But I think that's I am part of, if you guys didn't know, I'm part of the Her Game 2 lead team that is kind of bringing that awareness over here on the US. It's huge in the UK. So we're looking to, bring that awareness in addition to other things, of growing good humans out here through the game of soccer. So if you're looking into that, looking into any of that, I'm happy to share more later on too. But that's how I make an impact. Go ahead, Jason.
That's right. Well, I want to tie this together with what you said, Marissa, and then kind of lead us out. It's that, you've known me, you guys have all known me for a while now, and it's no one can change the world like you can when you show up. You were created for a very specific person to leave the world better than you found it. Find what that is. Find your people. Bring more people and invite more people into that passion and do life. Don't let life happen to you and don't let it pass you by. Right. And I think that is such an empowering thing, because it doesn't matter whether you have kids. It doesn't matter whether you coach. Right. It just matters if you show up. And sometimes, even if we're broken, or even if we're busted, or even if everything's not perfect, sometimes just showing up is enough. And there's plenty of people in your life that just want to know that you're there. So I just encourage people to show up and to get after it, because no one can change the world like you can when you show up. Thanks for joining us on the Soccer Geeks podcast. This has been one heck of a great show at the roundtable. Thanks to all of our guests today who've joined. We hope you guys have enjoyed it. We can't wait to see you next on the episodes that we're going to be rolling out to you guys. All the best to you from Marissa and I on the podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.